Hey there, I'm Brian, the creator of Smart Connections, a plugin that was the first to bring AI embeddings into Obsidian, and since then has been downloaded almost 500,000 times. So, how did I get here? Well, I take a lot of notes, and I'm someone that takes so many notes that I've had this unfortunate experience where when I was moving my documents into Obsidian from Google Drive a few years ago now, I had this unfortunate realization that there were documents some 20 pages long that somehow completely slipped my mind. And that's a horrible thing because all of my notes are on building my vision of the future. So losing those notes is effectively slowing or halting my progress. And it was when I discovered AI embeddings that I realized there's a solution to this, and that brought us Smart Connections. Since then, I've had this new perspective that AI can help people like myself both make more forward progress faster and not have that unfortunate experience of stumbling across valuable work that you've done in the past simply because you didn't have the systems in place to make sure that those documents or notes are in front of you at some point. Now, it's not all about AI. I have many systems based on getting things done and many great books that teach how to produce systems and make progress toward your vision. But those systems, some that have been around for decades, often fall apart when you're unable to meet the regular demand of going through a weekly review process or spending the time creating links between your notes. And that's where I believe AI can help. It started with AI embeddings so that I could see the relevant content based on what I'm currently working on. But it continues with these advances in language models that allow us to utilize AI as a personal editor that helps make suggestions and improves progress on what you're working on directly and allows you to consume more information knowing that you can distill the insights necessary for helping you achieve your goals. Now, before we get started with seeing how easy Smart Connections is to get started and set up, and the numerous other plugins that I've developed to help in a similar way, I want to make it clear that I'm not prescribing a single solution that is going to solve all of your problems. But what I am doing is I'm developing a user-aligned tool set that will allow you to create your own ensemble of tools that fit into your system of productivity, personal knowledge management, and note-taking so that you can do more. Okay, let's get started. So I have this vault that I used my own tools to generate using ChatGPT voice, and it's a vault that primarily contains a bunch of notes about different topics in PKM, and we're going to use that as a demo. So first I'm going to go to the community plugins section and get started with Smart Connections. It's this simple. We install the plugin and we enable the plugin. What happens now is that Smart Connections is going to load the smart environment. The smart environment has a couple key components. One is smart sources. This is a map directly to your notes. And the second is smart blocks, which takes each note and breaks it down into what you can call chunks. These chunks are made based on the headings and the structure of your note. And the reason for that is because it enables more useful excerpts for when you're seeing what content is connected to your current note. So you can see on the right hand side we had a import complete and embedding complete. And that happened just by enabling the plugin. That's because Smart Connections comes default with a local embedding model. That means all of your notes gain these AI embeddings without having to send your notes to a third-party server. Let's take a look at our results. So what we'll want to do first is open up a note, and then on the left hand side we'll see this open Smart Connections button, and now on the right hand side we have a list of blocks. That's why you see the same note appear multiple times, because it's taking an excerpt from that note and saying this is relevant to what you're currently looking at. And we can expand each of those to see what's inside that block. And if you click them, it'll take you to the relevant note. And if you are using this for building links within your notes, it's as simple as dragging the result into your note. That is Smart Connections. It's the primary feature. There were some additional features like Smart Chat and Smart Lookup. The Smart Lookup feature we can take a quick look at, and we can say how to do PKM. And we'll see immediately the para method, which many PKM users are familiar thanks to Tiago Forte of the Second Brain book. This works just like the Smart Connections, with the exception that instead of using your current note, it uses the query that you place into that lookup field. I'm going to save exploring the Smart Chat for in a few minutes when we see the new Smart Chat plugin that I've been working on, which separates Smart Chat from the Smart Connections plugin while still using the same core smart environment. But first, let's take a look at Smart Connect. Smart Connect is the application that allows you to open a direct connection between your local computer and ChatGPT. So I already have it installed, and when you first open Smart Connect, it'll look like this. So assuming you already have a connection key, you'll sign in and you'll use your email and your connection key as the password. My information's already saved, so I just have to hit login, and now we'll see I'm signed in. The next step is to create my smart environment inside of Smart Connect. We'll want to make sure the name is the same as the Obsidian vault, which you can find in the bottom left corner of your Obsidian. In this case, it is Smart Vault. And this allows Smart Connect to make the best connection between the application and the Obsidian application. we're going to select the Smart Vault folder here. And from there, we are ready to start our smart environment. Now, the smart environment window gives us options to utilize existing GPTs, which are like custom chats in ChatGPT that give ChatGPT extra abilities, like the ability to interact with your notes. Additional settings are action specific, like we have an alignment action. This action gives some initial information to the ChatGPT to help it better understand how it's working for you. And we can also check out the environment settings, where we can add I want to direct you to the action setting, because there's this useful setting called the inbox folder. The inbox folder will direct all created notes to a single folder, which I find very useful for keeping track of how the AI is interacting with your Obsidian Vault. Something else is important to note, that when you set up Smart Connect, we can go into our community plugins and see that we had a few new plugins added to our Obsidian Vault. We have the Smart Connect plugin, we have the Smart Editor plugin, and we have the Smart Plugins plugin. We will get more into those in a minute, but first we just want to turn those on, and I'm going to restart Obsidian just for good measure. Now back to the Smart Connect app. We have this button, New Group, in parentheses Custom GPT. I mentioned that custom GPTs provide special abilities to ChatGPT. Those abilities we call actions, because they are actions that the ChatGPT can take on your behalf. So an action group is the group of actions that are available to a specific GPT. Let's create a new group. When you create a new group, you can add specific actions. We'll add the alignment action. We'll add the draft change action, and we'll add the draft move action, and we'll also add the list folders action. Once we add these actions, we can create our GPT. You can do this manually by following these instructions, or you can click this Auto Create Custom GPT button, which will save you a few minutes by inputting the necessary configuration into ChatGPT. And then when it's finished, we should see in this GPT URL field the URL of our GPT. So we can close that out, and we'll refresh the Smart Environment window using Control R or Command R on a Mac. And from here we can open the custom GPT. Okay, so I opened the custom GPT, and we can edit the GPT. We might want to change the name to Smart Vault Demo GPT. Description: interact with my notes. And then for the instructions, I have some prepared instructions that I would like to use. These basically just tell the GPT how to utilize the drafts feature. These instructions, the ones that are more necessary, will be automatically included in a future version, but for now, we're just going to copy and paste them in. So what can we do now? Can you tell me what notes are in my inbox folder?
Smart Vault demo. GPT wants to send some data to a website to finish your request. Please check the conversation history to allow.
So, on the first request to the GPT, you'll have to click Always Allow. And after that, we will be able to interact with the GPT. List my folders to find my inbox folder, and then tell me what notes are in my inbox. If we go to the environment window, there's a button at the bottom called Open Console Log, where we can actually see the exact requests being made.
One is called Creativity and Self-Expression, which reflects on creative freedom and links to things like lifelong learning and meaningful work. Then there's Eat That Frog method, which is all about tackling your hardest task first.
Okay, so it knows which notes are there. Use the draft move action to move those inbox notes to a better folder that already exists. So now the GPT is suggesting that we move this file to this folder. It shows you can review the move.
All 3 notes are now drafted to move into more fitting folders. Creativity and self-expression.
And if we click Move Now, it'll complete the move.
Eat That Frog method to task management and habit. You want to finalize these moves or make any tweaks before that.
Review the inbox folder and move the last file. It seems like we had a bit of a hiccup on that last file, so let's see if we can get that fixed.
Looks like the only remaining full note in your inbox is habit stacking, and that one's already drafted to move into habits and routines. The rest are either empty or already in.
Move it again.
Done. The habit stacking note is now drafted again to move into habits and routine.
So you can see now the inbox is empty. Let's try something else. So another plugin that is already available on the Obsidian plugin store is Smart Chat GPT. We can install that, enable it, and from here, let's check out this operator note. I have this prompt where I want ChatGPT operator to find LinkedIn posts that mention smart connections so that I can review them. So what I did is I opened up this, let me do that one more time a little slower. I opened up the command palette and insert the ChatGPT code block. The ChatGPT code block allows me to bookmark ChatGPT threads directly inside a note. For example, all of the ChatGPT threads I use to find these smart connections posts, I want to keep inside of this note. So now that we are in the operator ChatGPT thread, we can take this prompt and we can tell it to go to LinkedIn, search for smart connections, and get those links. And there's a bit of a surprise at the end of that prompt. If you read ahead, you might figure it out. But since operator is not the fastest, let's move on to what else we can do and come back to this in a minute. Let's see what else we can do with the custom GPT we just created. help me improve the content of the notes that you just moved into new folders. So part of
Looks like all 3 draft move files are currently empty, which means the content didn't carry over.
get the contents of one of the folders that you moved an inbox note to and review the note contents for ways to improve and create a draft with the changes. So what we can do is we can have ChatGPT actually make changes to our notes. But more importantly, we can review those changes. And personally, as somebody who likes to keep a very well curated, I like to keep a very well curated Obsidian vault. So being able to review these changes is a non-negotiable for having AI work on my notes. So we can see here, we can review the changes for the habit stacking note. Now, if we go to the habit stacking note, let's try this again. Find a note from a new folder and make improvements. It seems that the AI had a bit of a hiccup. So let's try a new folder so we don't confuse it with where it was moving files to and from.
I've added a few improvements to the career versus calling note, highlighting how some people blend both paths and how a calling doesn't always have to be job related. It's now saved as a draft you can review. Want me to help revise another one from this folder?
Yes. So you could see we added this improvement section.
I've created a draft for contribution and impact with some added thoughts, like how quiet, consistent contributions matter just as much as bold ones.
Find another note, and this time add links.
What would you like to do with the next note? Do you want to improve it, summarize it, connect it to others, or something else?
Improve it so that it adds links to an existing paragraph.
Nice. I've created a draft that enhances the Ikigai note by adding internal links to each of the 4 key components: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for.
So that's an example of how the ChatGPT can interact directly with your Obsidian vault. But what if we want to skip the ChatGPT step and go directly to the editing step? Let's open up a note. This one looks good because it doesn't have any links currently. Now, let's use our command palette and we can type in draft. And we have the option to manually input a draft, but in this case we want to generate the draft with AI. And let's say add links to the note. But before we do that, let's add some context. So we can just start clicking, just so it's clear, there's this build context button here. And from there we can start clicking the different notes, and at the bottom you can see we're gaining a list of notes to use as context. And I almost forgot. Before we can finish this, we need to go to our Smart Editor settings and add a chat model API key. I have my API key ready. So let's add that there. And let's try out the new GPT 4.1 mini model. Okay, so back to creating a draft. Add links to the note. Let's build context. And now let's create the draft. Right now, that was quick, before I could even explain what was happening. We added links to this line, and it shows you by highlighting the new content in a brighter green. And we also added links to this line. Perfect. If you wanted to, you could add a ChatGPT code block here, and we could paste this content in, and we could say, improve the following content, limit to changing 5 lines maximum. And that's just for demo here. And this also shows you how the Smart ChatGPT code block works. So now that we submitted the request and it got this URL, we have the ability to access the URLs from this note like a bookmark. And we can also mark this thread as done when we're done with it. But before we get there, let's refresh here. It looks like it's done. And if we were to go to draft manual input, we can paste that content here and review changes. It wants to delete a bunch of things, but that is something we can change by discard. Okay, that is something we can change by saying be sure to wrap the change in anchor lines that represent existing content so it's easy for me to review. Whoops, didn't mean to do all caps there. While that's finishing, let's check out the Smart Plugins plugin. The Smart Plugins plugin, if you have a connection key or a supporter key, you get access to these experimental and early release plugins. For example, the new Smart Chat plugin, which we can install now, and also the Smart Context Early Access plugin, which there's a stable release version of the Smart Context plugin, but this adds some extra features like the ability to include context from outside of my Obsidian vault, which is useful for me where I often like to include code in the context. There's also the Smart Connections Early Release plugin. That plugin currently gives us a feature that instead of having our connections on the right-hand side, we can have it in the footer of each note, similar to how Obsidian already displays inlinks and outlinks from the current file inside of the footer of each note. There's also some other platforms that are similar to the Smart ChatGPT plugin, but allow you to use platforms like Grok, Claude, DeepSeek, Gemini, Perplexity. And we also have this plugin, which we'll install because, as I mentioned, sources map directly to the content in your Obsidian, and the smart sources more types of sources. In this case, we're going to bring in images. Let's set that up real quick so we can use it in the rest of the demo. I'm going to need my API key again, and we can use the 4.1 mini model for handling those images. What it's handling is taking that image and creating a text representation so that the text-based embeddings also work with images. Let's restart Obsidian again for good measure. And this time when it starts, our importing process will take a little bit longer as it imports the images from within our vault. Now, let's see if that works. So we have this awesome image here, and we can see that there are actually connections being made with this image. And we can go to our smart sources. Ooh, it looks like we didn't have our one way we can ensure everything is embedded properly is we can clear our sources data and reload the sources. This is not something I recommend doing frequently, especially if you have a lot of notes, but it often can resolve any small hiccups you have. While it's finishing the embedding, let's take a look back at that operator we started. So what we have here is the operator wants to confirm that we want a note created from the LinkedIn post link. So I can click confirm here, and operator should continue to create that note. And it looks like it ran into a bit of a hiccup. Okay, so now that I've resolved the hiccup we were having with the create note page, let's have operator finish creating those notes. So I'm telling it to create a note with both links, and what you could do is in the initial prompt have it creating these notes so you don't have to go back and tell it, because that defeats the point of having this being an automated workflow in the background. But since we ran into a hiccup, we had to tell it to create those links again, and we can also have it automatically confirm through prompting and just say create the note without requiring confirmation. But when it creates the note, you can see it pops up here in our Obsidian. This is the note. We have the two posts. We can click them to open them and review them. Well, maybe we can go back and have it fix that too. Those links didn't work. Please fix. I wonder if these links work. No. So while that is getting fixed up, let's see what else we have. So we installed the new smart chat. Don't ask for confirmation. Let's tell it that. Okay. Now, before we get to Smart Chat, let's try that out again. Well, it took us to the page on LinkedIn. And we can go back once again. Link to the actual post, please. Okay. The new Smart Chat can be found by this little smiley face in the chat icon, which is different than the original chat icon. And you'll see when you open the chat, the first thing it wants us to do is open settings so we can add our API key again. It's good to have the API key available really quick like that. Okay. So now we can just confirm. Hi. Are they there? Oh, and we have this think button on, but let's turn that off for now. Who am I? And when I use a self-referential pronoun like I or me or my notes, it triggers the chat to use the embeddings, the same embeddings that the Smart Connections plugin created, to find relevant content. And we can edit that. We can remove some pieces of context. We can add some context. Oops. We can add some of these screenshots to context since the model is multimodal, and when we hit done, we see we have the context with the percentage of a confidence score of why it included that, in addition to these other pieces of context we just manually added. And then we can hit send, and now the response is based on the context that we sent to the AI. What else is new in the new Smart Chat? Primarily, the new plugin was developed to facilitate future developments in the chat by extracting it from the Smart Connections plugin so that the code is clearer and easier to understand. But something that is new is we can drag a piece of context from our file explorer on the left and say, summarize this image. Maybe we have a little difficulty with images at the moment, so we can try again with some other pieces of content and say, and there we go. So you can use self-referential pronouns to automatically look up content, and you can also drag context directly into the chat. Let's see how we're doing with that operator. It looks like we already reviewed that note. And we probably already reviewed that one too, since those links aren't working. Let's see if it gave us any update. Why isn't the direct link to the post working? So while it's doing that, let's take a look at what else we have. We have the Smart Context plugin. The Smart Context plugin gives us some options for when we're copying large amounts of context. Like, we can include a file tree to show how the context is relative via folders from each other piece of context. We can wrap each piece of context with the file path and the extension using code blocks to make things cleaner. Let's try that out. I have this habit context note and a ChatGPT thread already started here. The first thing we can do is go and using our context, copy current note to clipboard, which I have this Control-Shift-C as a hotkey to make it easy to access. We can start by just copying just this note, and let's take a look at what that looks like. I copied just the note, and you can see we have that file tree, just one note, the path, and it is wrapped in this markdown code block. Now let's try what happens if we do link depth 1. Well, we have these links here in this note, so now when we paste it, we see all of those links appeared in this context that we copied to the clipboard. And this brings me to one of my most powerful workflows that I've been using recently, which is building a note. Now imagine this note was for a project, and these links were relevant context for the project I'm working on. Well, maybe my next action is I want to summarize the context. What I can do is I can paste my objective, and then I can copy all that context to the clipboard and paste it in here. And now the ChatGPT has access to all that context when it completes my objective, which is summarize the context. And after a few moments, we can hit the refresh button, and now we have our summary. Let's check on the operator again. Create the note. So this time it thinks it has the direct link. So did it work? Oh, okay. It looks like that link works. So now this time when it creates the note, which the purpose of this is if we have operators, we want them operating in the background, but we still need to review their progress, just like as if an employee were working and submitting their progress to us at the end of the day or the week. Now, here it goes. This is our note, and if we click the link, we see that it brings us to the post about smart connections and Obsidian. Perfect. So you can see the smart ecosystem is not a single tool, but a collection of tools. A collection of tools that my goal is to help you develop your own systems with access to the tools that allow you to build an ensemble that allows you to maximize the value of your personal system. That's it for now. I hope that this video helped you recognize the value of these individual tools that share a common core smart environment. I hope that developers will soon recognize the value in building on this core smart environment rather than reinventing the wheel for each new AI plugin. And I see a future where we all have access to many AI smart tools that allow us to work in the way that makes us most productive and get us that much closer to our vision of the future. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you join me on this journey to an AI era and that consists primarily of empowered individuals.